clenched his jaw, closed the distance to the captive demigod, and stabbed him in the heart with the weapon bequeathed to him. At the far end of the meadow, beyond the angel and the demon restraining him, the wild god bellowed in rage and despair. 1 week ago. Their Majesties, the King and Queen of the Dryads, now invite you to grace them with your presence. Morgan's face tightened as the herald's solemn words echoed across the sumptuous hall leading to the throne room. Grace them with our presence, he grumbled to Cassius under his breath. We've waited a goddamn week to see them. Galliard Fenhorn cleared his throat diplomatically where he stood beside them in formal court attire. The former head mage of the Dryad royal family had been assigned the task of being Cassius and Morgan's official guide during their stay in Ivory Peaks. It wasn't deliberate, Cassius murmured. The Dryad guards started pushing open the towering gilded oak doors before them, the wood creaking loudly as it glided across a pale marble floor. Morgan ran a finger around the neckline of his silk shirt and caftan, irate. Still, I can't wait to get out of these clothes. You look good in them, Cassius said. Surprise flashed across Morgan's handsome face. I do? Cassius clamped his lips together. Morgan looked so pleased he was almost puffing his chest out. Those clothes were made by a 3,000-year-old Dryad who tailors exclusively for our royal family. Regina Bavaric remarked dryly. Gold and silver glittered in the opulent dress of the Dryad's court seer as she shifted, her ashwood staff thumping to the ground with a firm sound. Few have the privilege of wearing her garments. Morgan rolled his eyes. Cassius bit back a sigh. His lover was not one for pomp and ceremony. If Morgan had had his way, they would have left Ivory Peaks several days ago with Julia and Zach. It was Galliard who had convinced them to stay, the Dryad promising there had to be a valid reason for the king and queen's absence from the capital. Regina's silence on the subject had spoken volumes. It hadn't taken long for Cassius to pick up on the undercurrent of tension coursing through the palace in the days following their arrival. Even Morgan, who was usually obtuse when it came to such things, had sensed it. Something was happening. Something grave enough to have taken the rulers of the Dryad kingdom and their firstborn heir away from the capital. The third and fourth princes had remained tight-lipped on the subject during the dinners and the tea parties they'd hosted, keeping to neutral topics with the practiced ease of born diplomats. Cassius had seen traces of their older brother, the second prince Cedric Esteban, in them, though Arfin and Tor were more refined and tactful than their sharp-tongued sibling. Cedric hadn't accompanied Cassius, Morgan, and Galliard to Ivory Peaks, preferring instead to stay on Earth to better get to know Eden Monroe, his fiancée and the wielder of the blood-cursed Devilwood summoning staff. That no one was willing to tell Cassius and Morgan why they'd had to wait a week to meet the Dryad king and queen was not necessarily a bad thing. The two angels had no right to be privy to the private affairs of the Dryad court. Except that Morgan is one of them. It had been a month since Morgan had manifested Dryad magic during their battle with Lucille Hartman, the disciple of the man who had manipulated Tanya Lancaster and her son Chester Moran from the shadows to achieve his dark goals. Having saved the life of the second prince of the Dryad kingdom, Morgan and Cassius had been invited to Ivory Peaks by the king and queen of the Dryads to receive their thanks. Though he'd ventured into the Dryads' territory on a few occasions in the past few hundred years, during his missions for the agencies that governed the otherworldly on Earth, Cassius had never visited the capital. The people he'd been after would never have dared venture this far, preferring instead to keep to the vast mountain ranges and thick forests that characterized the kingdom. There was also the fact that the only official gateway between Earth and the Dryad realm was under the control of the royal family. The criminals Cassius was